Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and yet again Boris Johnson is talking about having to tighten restrictions to manage our out of control COVID situation, and yet again he's going to be implementing measures after his scientific advisors has told him to do so. So why does Boris Johnson always act so late? Why is it that people have to say, if you look at the way the government have acted throughout this 9 months of COVID emergency in the UK, why is it always that we're always saying the government are acting 3 weeks too late? And if we'd have acted in a more timely manner, it would have been better for us, and we would have imagined better for him as well. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, twin threats faced in the UK are COVID and Brexit, of course. Boris Johnson's attitude has been characterised by leaving things until the last minute. He left the Brexit agreement until the last minute, believing that a game of chicken would allow him to gain the most concessions from the EU. In the event, it only forced him to make all the concessions. With COVID, he's also left us using restrictions only too late. They've only ever been applied too late, usually weeks too late to get the best benefit. Like Homer Simpson waiting until November to sell his pumpkin stocks. Boris Johnson waits until we pass the point of no return and then acts when there's only one thing left to do. The second English lockdown started to work after double the amount of time that would have been needed had he acted when SAGE, which is the scientific advisory group for emergencies, told him to. They told him to lock down 21st of September. They said it'll take 2 weeks. In the event, he locks down much later. It took 4 weeks, and even then, when I say it took 4 weeks, we only locked down for 4 weeks. It still didn't actually do the job. You know, as the lockdown ended on December the 2nd, we were at 14,000 new cases per day on average. This was too high to ease restrictions. We also now know that there was a new variant that appeared, and it was being tracked and had continued to increase during the lockdown. So although the lockdown was suppressing the overall rate of infection, it was not suppressing at all the overall rate of infection specifically for the new variant. That was continuing to grow. In other words, the form of lockdown that we used in November is not enough to suppress this new variant. Boris Johnson's talking about maybe we need a new lockdown, but if that new lockdown is only the same as the one in November, do you know what? It's not actually going to do enough. But between December the 2nd and with the new variant that is believed to transmit, according to epidemiologists, up to 56% more effectively, and crucially is transmitted more easily in young people, making the decision around schools a little bit questionable. At the time, we were at 14,000 new cases per day. Now, 2 weeks later, on December the 16th, we were at 20,000 new cases per day. 2 weeks after that, it had doubled to 40,000 new cases per day. 4 days after that, a couple of days ago, we'd hit 50,000 new cases per day. And another way of looking at it, because one of the ways of looking at this is how long does it take for cases to double? So it took exactly 14 days for the 7-day moving average number of new cases in the UK to double from 20,000 to 40,000. It also took exactly 14 days to double from 26,000 to 52,000, which is the latest one as I'm recording this. And so that basically means government inaction at the moment means that we're doubling the number of cases every 2 weeks. Now, if that holds, if we don't do anything to arrest that, then we'll be on over 100,000 new cases per day in just 2 weeks from now. And just imagine what that would mean for the real number of new cases. Because it's not actually like at the moment, as I'm doing this, we're on about 52,000 new cases per day. When you're watching this, it'll have gone up a little bit more. That's not actually the number of new cases. That's just the ones we've got test results for. There will be people who are asymptomatic, not getting tests because they don't realise they need one, who are still nonetheless becoming infected. Now, none of this is surprising. It's all very well Boris Johnson defending himself by saying that criticism is made in hindsight. That's what he keeps saying. Oh yeah, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's not hindsight, because critics pointed out exactly what would happen some time ago. It's not hindsight when you point out before it happens what's going to happen and then it happens. That's foresight, something Johnson and his government seem to lack. Except, of course, I don't believe he does lack foresight. He has top experts advising him. Unless he just doesn't believe them, then he also knows exactly what's going to happen. And if he doesn't believe his own experts, he should hire different ones. Sage members are chosen by the government, after all. They're not forced upon them. That he has not replaced them means he accepts their expertise. He just refuses to act on their wisdom. So why does he do it? Why does he keep putting off acting in a way that he knows he's going to have to eventually? And also, you could look at the way that this plays out in the public. It's very damaging to him personally and to the Conservative Party. The public opinion is overwhelmingly in favour of the measures advised by scientists and medical experts. So what benefit is there in putting them off? Now, I've alluded to this quote below, but I'm going to read it out in full now because it's very relevant. This was written by someone called Raphael Baer in The Guardian a little while ago. And I'm going to read it all. It says, Johnson's technique for dealing with problems is to let them run out of control, building to a point of sufficient crisis that delay is no longer viable. That way, the choice becomes perversely easier because there are fewer options left. Wait long enough and there might only be one. That is how he has dealt with Brexit. He imagines that brinksmanship is a negotiating strategy to wring concessions out of Brussels, but in reality it is just a way to simplify the decision by eliminating options that needed time to develop. He lets procrastination do the heavy lifting. He can then tell himself and his audience that the final outcome, while not perfect, is the best available solution. And maybe it is, but only because it's so late in the day that all the better solutions have since expired. It is a chaotic way to run anything, leaving it all to the last minute, relying on a critical mass of external pressure to get motivated. As a way of governing in a pandemic, it is disastrous because there is no slack time between deadlines. The moment to make the tough choices is always now. The rate at which good options decay is exponential. The virus thrives on indecision. Johnson's method is effective for one thing, though. It guarantees a sustained pitch of political drama, with the figure of the Prime Minister lit centre stage. It forces the nation to hang on his word, waiting for him to act, while the consequences of his inaction play out. That bathes him in an aura of power, but it is not leadership. Now, I do not know if this is the way that Boris Johnson consciously operates. I do not know if this is his motivation, that he is aware of this, but it absolutely fits his behaviour as Prime Minister. You could read that through the prism of how he's dealt with Brexit, how he's dealt with COVID, how he's dealt with everything, and it fits. It absolutely fits. Ordinarily, a strategy like this might not even be that easy to discern. But the thing is that 2020 threw up so many opportunities for Boris Johnson to show his mettle in a crisis that when you see the same method being used every single time, you begin to realise that it can't actually be a coincidence. Even the systems needed to deal with Brexit had the same attitude. You know, when he became Prime Minister, he knew that he needed to take us out of the EU. That was his promise. That was what he was going to do. He also knew that he had an intention to leave the customs union. There wasn't even any doubt about it. We were leaving the customs union as far as he was concerned. That meant needing new infrastructure at our ports. So why did he delay, making the situation worse now? Because he needed the solutions, which nobody will regard as good, to be necessary. With any problem, if you act sooner, you need less extreme solutions. But it could also be argued that there is a greater range of solutions. The reason he didn't implement any Brexit infrastructure until late on is because the less extreme solution would have been, well, not leaving the EU. Oh, if it was going to mean all this, let's not leave the EU. Or at least, if it got to the point where it was 2020, we'd already left, extending the transition period would have been the less extreme option, because he didn't even start building it in the first half of 2020 when we'd already left the EU. These options had to be taken off the table before he would implement, for example, the lorry parks and other physical infrastructure, which has still not been started in some places, as the only thing left to do. Wait until you have to do it. There's no other way, there's no turning back. even though this didn't actually give him enough time to actually have them in place. Same with COVID. He knew that the compulsory wearing of face masks, restrictions on entry into the UK, test, trace and isolate would have helped us deal with the crisis better, perhaps even well. But he also knew that many of his supporters would resent these moves, as indeed they have. And if he'd made a success of COVID, it could be argued, it's all right us looking back, if we could see these two parallel universes where we're stuck in the one where he made an arse of it and then there's the one where he did it well. But would the supporters have appreciated it? Because we can't actually see into alternate realities. Many, if he'd have managed the situation well, would have said, well, we've seemed to have managed this pretty well. We didn't need to act at all. Which I know is a mad way of thinking. Oh, we acted and it turned out all right. Therefore, we didn't need to act because it turned out all right. But that's the way they think. They would have said we didn't need to have done anything, that it was all unnecessary. That was it. So it's possible that Johnson thought that he'd need to see let everyone else see what happens when he does nothing at all, and then act when the country is basically begging him to. That way it's their fault, not his. He's acting according to what people need him to do. The problem is, as already pointed out by Mr. Bear there, it's extremely dangerous with a situation like COVID. He's not qualified to judge when is the last possible moment to act. With Brexit, it was more straightforward. All he had to do was wait till the last possible moment. He knew he could get a deal. He knew he could get a deal if he was willing to back down on everything, which it seemed he was. Take whatever the EU will offer at that last possible moment, sell it back home as best he can. There was always that possibility. There is no negotiating with the virus, and by allowing the situation to get very bad before he acts, he actively encourages the virus to experiment with mutations and develop new features that make it more difficult to control, as seems to be the case now. Heaven help us if he allows a new variant to emerge that is not affected by our vaccines as well. Just how bad does it have to get, for example, before his enablers in the media finally accept that the situation has gotten out of hand and they need to start informing people? Because I've lost faith that his own party will take him to task over this in time now. Yes, I think they're going to get rid of him this year, but I don't think it's going to be in time to rescue this situation. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you do, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.